Um, so, but with just what you said, there's a lot there. Um, I have a question first. You have, as you said, you've done this work for a lot of time. You have, at least for a significant period of time, worked really hard on it, right? Like you could say, diligently. Yeah, and so it matters that you have done that effort, because one of the signs that things can be premature is if we haven't done that effort. It's not always required, but if you start to feel like unmotivated and one hasn't put in that effort, then most likely the effort is first needed. But it is natural for the energy of that effort to start to dwindle. And that actually can be a progression, because you start to, something starts to kind of lose its momentum, the energy of seeking, in a sense. And it does appear, as the metaphor I was using of, the fruit is ripe and ready to fall. um, it does start to feel like nothing worked, nothing's working, all this work, it's not changing. And that can be a sign of it's early and we need to work hard. But in your case, I'm feeling kind of the opposite. And that's why I also checked if you had taken it seriously. And my intuition, without you answering, was that you have. And then you confirm. It's not something you just kind of very gently dabbled in, all your life. You've probably taken it really seriously at times. And so we need to do that until, in a sense, until it's easier to push than to not. Then when the hard thing is to, in a sense, let go of the seeking, of the efforting, because then that becomes, there's something that starts to feel like, I failed, this isn't working, nothing's getting me what I wanted. But it's no longer, I've already been, in a sense, disenchanted from the what life was going to give me, you know all the promises of experience in the world, relationships, money, jobs, all of that. When that, there's a bit of a disenchantment, and I start to really feel like, well, that's not satisfying deeply anymore. And then this work starts to fall in the same category. It's not working, it's not satisfying, it's not totally getting me what I want. And when I'm having a sense this is where you're at, but let me know if not. Of course, yeah, yeah, and I'm speaking generally to that. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And obviously, we can, our life, we can have really good days and good things happen, and but when the core of the experience is this kind of disenchantment with everything, and now it's including the spiritual work, it's like, shit, now what? And that's actually I was referring earlier. You might have been, yeah, you were here. I was saying, the tools come to a place where they no longer work, and then it's good to have like another tool, that another pointer teaching that's appropriate in that place. But at some point, we come to a point where no tool, no teaching, no pointing works, and it's coming to this point of surrender, because there is nothing you can do, and everything you try to do will fail. But it applies only to a very specific place. To somebody earlier on, what's needed is the encouragement to practice and inquire, and put in the will, and don't ignore the enjoyment. Always there has to be a deep enjoyment and curiosity and love for the work. But at some point, there's a disenchantment. I was there for many years. It was, I don't know, 10 years for me. And it just started to feel more and more and more disenchanted. Catherine would ask me for several years, pretty much every day, "How are you?" And I would have one answer for several years. Just this sense of loss and like unfulfillment. Just like loss, just loss, sadness and loss. But it wasn't a loss of a grief. It was just this like, there's just nothing here. And I was not having a good time. I was, in a sense, kind of at peace with it, but it wasn't the peace that I discovered later. But I was at peace in that, I had listened to a teaching from another teacher who told me, if to relate to something that was hard, to relate to it with the attitude of, if this is going to be like this for the rest of your life, guaranteed, so there's no chance you can change it, can you just be okay with it or make peace with it? So kind of, instead of the strategy of what can I do to change this, to revert that and assume, what if this is like this for the rest of my life? There's no energy to change it. Can I be with it? And that's what I practiced, in a sense. I practiced with this sense of loss and sadness, of like, the work didn't work, life was okay but not very fulfilling. There were great things happening, but at that deep level, it was like just more of life. And then my teacher died, which made that even worse. But I still kept like a curiosity, but it wasn't a deep will and efforting, and it was still a curiosity, but it was mostly just practicing to be with what is. And what was just this kind of unsatisfying sense of loss and sadness. This is my personal experience, so I'm saying that because it could be very different for others. But I'm saying this to you, Hari, because I can't know, but I have a sense that you might be at some level of close to just a need for surrender, like a deep surrender. And that's not something you can do. Again, you can't. This is, the word surrender gets thrown around a lot. It's like, you should surrender, you must surrender, or you need to surrender. But exactly, and because the thing with surrender, which I kind of recognized when it happened, is that you can't do it. And so that's why I'm saying to you, you just might be at the point where that's the only thing that's left and you can't do it. So surrendering, think of it as like in war. So if you still have a fighting chance, you're going to fight. And so anything you can do is just going to be more fighting. And surrendering is completely against your will. There's a point where your willpower, all it can do is fight and resist and deny and be in service of separation and illusion at that point. And the surrendering is basically, it happens against your will. And it's when your independent, separate will finally just collapses. That's how it felt like to me. It was just completely, there was just this collapse, and the what was happening was just overwhelming, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't control it. I couldn't, anything I did just did not work, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And this was very fast in the end. And then what happened was the seeing that independent will wasn't real. There was no such thing. But up until that moment, it was my experience. And so maybe for you, Hari, what could be useful is this pointing of, what if this is how the rest of your life is going to be? Or assume it is, and nothing's going to change. And then can you be okay with that? Practice just being okay with that, accepting that. If it's gray, if it, whatever mixed bag of not very awesome things, and then assume that's how it's going to be, but don't convince yourself that's how it's, it's different. Assume as a way to engage with it. There's no guarantee it's going to change. Assume it's not going to change, but don't be closed to the possibility that it changes, right? Just don't, that whole energy of working towards that changing, that maybe it's time to put that at rest. Which could still mean like you go to a retreat, you can still go, you come here, you can talk to Francis, but the underlying energy and motivation is different. Be in good company. Stay close to people that feels good to be close with. Be curious. Yeah, beautiful.